Today I'm celebrating Guy Fawkes, a very mysterious festival which I remember being absolutely stumped by when I was taking some foreign students to visit the amazing celebrations that happen in Lewes on Bonfire Night. And at the time there were giant effigies of Guy Fawkes and the Pope, and I believe it was President George Bush at the time, that were being put onto a massive fire with crowds of people screaming, "Burn him! Burn him!" And I remember some of these foreign students turning to me, and one in particular saying, "What is this about?" It's quite confounding. And Guy Fawkes, better known as Guy Fawkes to his French compatriots, was a French patriot who was loyal to the Pope, who was trying to detonate gunpowder underneath the British Parliament so that the Pope's power could be reinstalled, so that England would yet again become a Catholic country, moving away from its recent history as a Protestant nation. And so when people are celebrating Guy Fawkes or Guy Fawkes in this country, what are they celebrating? Are they celebrating the fact that he was discovered and that the gunpowder plot was foiled? Are they celebrating the fact that the British crown was protected, that the Catholic Church was usurped, or it was at least prevented from taking power again? It's so confusing. It's very confounding, and it's even more bizarre. Well, not bizarre, but there are even more kind of contradictory threads involved when you get to know the Lewes bonfire celebrations, because there they burn. It's a very Catholic town, and yet they burn effigies of the Pope, and they also make fun of the Catholic clergy. In fact, one of the honoured positions for the bonfire societies are they're described as the clergy. And on the morning of the 5th of November, they go out and have a breakfast together, all dressed up as Catholic priests. And though some of them may be Catholics themselves, they are very much mocking the clergy. And really they're trying to point to the corruption of the establishment of the church. You know, they may be Christians themselves, and yet they are anti-popery. They are anti-clergy. The idea that there are these ministers that place themselves in between the common man and God, that have to be paid in money for their services. So, and another thread is at the beginning of the Lewes bonfire celebrations, they have a parade of, I think it's 23 crucifixes, that maybe it's not 23, but it's around that pass through the centre of town, sometimes burning crucifixes, and this is to represent the martyrs that were crucified in Lewes. Now, if my memory is correct, they were Catholic martyrs. Were they Catholics or were they Protestants? But again, it adds another whole level of complexity. Obviously they're remembering the deaths of these people who died for their beliefs, but as to what their beliefs were, even now I'm confused, having looked into this a few times. The celebrations of Fireworks Day are so convoluted. It's hard enough to explain it to myself, let alone to a foreign student in the midst of a crowd saying, what on earth is going on? It's very disorientating. Plus, these festivals they coincide with a period of time where Liberty Cap mushrooms are in great abundance, and so there's a very common association with pagan psychedelic rituals, and it also corresponds with the Taurid meteor shower. Did Guy Fawkes choose to try and detonate these explosives at that particular time for a reason? Was it a symbolic event? Was it an expression of the Day of the Dead? Oh my goodness, there are more questions than can be answered, it seems to me, in this celebration. And yet, from my earliest days, long before I'd even heard of Lewes as a city, or um, even begun to understand what Guy Fawkes was, the celebration of Bonfire Night always was something that I absolutely adored. I remember going to local schools and joining in their huge bonfires and having sparklers and seeing some fireworks. Uh, it's a really powerful childhood memory. I love that sense of being out in the cold around a massive fire, heading home for jacket potatoes that are nearly burnt in the oven, so crispy, so thick. It's a very simple and raw pleasure of childhood that I continue to live out with my own children to this day. I think it manages to reconnect us with a sense of childlike wonder no matter where we are. Now, if you're not from the UK, there's probably not going to be a local bonfire near you, and the idea of Guy Fawkes and Guy Fawkes probably seems completely strange. You know this character because he was the character that was exemplified in the incredible film V. Um, which I highly recommend to everyone. And that's my another personal celebration that I like to do every year, is a rewatching of V, which seems to be ever more relevant as our society seems to degenerate to a state of horrendous totalitarian control. So these are my thoughts on Guy Fawkes and the celebrations that take place tonight. You can picture me somewhere taking a moment of silence just to remember the gunpowder plot. As they say, remember the 5th of November.